As you know, on the Extraordinary Podcast, we seek out ordinary people living extraordinary lives. But what about those that have a hard time just being ordinary? What about the people who already face major challenges just to keep up? Can they live an extraordinary life? I believe so. I believe that just like each and every ordinary person has a unique skill or ability, so do those with disabilities. Just because you are handicapped in some aspect of your life doesn't mean you still cannot thrive in others. The skill sets may be more difficult to identify or take full advantage of, but I believe everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something meaningful to contribute, no matter how challenged they may be. Overcoming a challenge is what inspires people. Just making the effort can often be enough to push someone else to take that first step. That effort motivates others. Wynn Charles isn't just making an effort. She is pushing boundaries and stereotypes for those with cerebral palsy. She holds 2 college degrees, has published multiple books, and even gave Ironman triathlon a shot. She also has one of the most professionally run podcasts I've ever experienced. That's in large part to her best friend and executive producer, Danielle Coulter. Turns out, Dani has the same disability and her own set of challenges that she is overcoming on the slopes of Colorado. Hear how their paths crossed and how the 2 ladies are changing perspectives and challenging what is possible in my conversation with Wynn Charles. This episode is brought to you by Atlantic Custom Group. For all your home repair and improvement needs, Atlantic Custom Group specializes in the unique and inspiring. From custom libraries and millwork to tree houses and off-grid structures, Atlantic Custom Group can do it all. Renovate your kitchen, remodel your basement, or reinvent your entire home with Atlantic Custom Group. Call now for an appointment at 770-827-7591. Atlantic Custom Group is the official sponsor for the Extraordinary Podcast. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Wynn Charles. How's it going?
Thank you, Nate, for having me on. And for those of you that don't know who I am, who are thinking, what is this stranger doing on Nate's Well, Nate and I worked together on my podcast, Ask Wynn. I have a physical disability and soon to be a double diagnosis too. And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, so tell us a little bit about the disability first, and then I want to dive deep into the podcast.
Okay. The disability is called cerebral palsy. It's a lack of oxygen injury at birth. I was supposed to be born in September, Lana being born in June, and
A preemie.
a preemie, yes, exactly. For the people who are listening in Colorado, because Nate and I'm out in Colorado. Nate has his Colorado roots, and for the people listening out in all neck of the woods, I am a walking, talking miracle of Children's Hospital in Denver, Colorado, which is one of the 8 children's hospitals ranked by U.S. News and World Reports last time I checked. And so I'm a walking, talking miracle of them.
And so tell me about this podcast. How did you get started with that?
I wrote a book, and then I thought, okay, I hit the publishing button, and at the time I was listening to podcasts, and I thought, how in the world am I going to market this book? Well, I was listening to podcasts about how to write a book, and I'm okay. Then they get to the marketing aspect, and then they go, oh, this is how you can do it. This is how you can do it. And this podcast still is in existence today, called the Creative Pen Podcast, out of the UK, run by the fabulous Joanna Penn. And so they told me about the marketing aspects, And then I thought, okay, I'm going to try YouTube. Well, YouTube did not work for me. YouTube absolutely failed. And then what ended up happening is little old me turned to Facebook, and then I went on my merry way, got my questions answered, signed up for my podcast host, and then ever since then I've been doing content creation. And when I lost my job due to the pandemic, I had a part-time job teaching. I don't know whether teaching hated me or I hated it, but I lost my job due to the pandemic. And so when I flew home from a podcasting conference in Orlando, Florida, I started openly weeping on a plane. And by the time I got to Chicago O'Hare International Airport, I I figured out why, and then so I took it. I deep dived into journalism.
Nice, man. You just unloaded so much onto us that I need to dive into. I want to come back and visit a lot of those things you talked about. YouTube, you talked about the things that happened in Florida, but and losing the job. But let's start with the book and the impetus for the podcast. You talked about you wanted to use the podcast as an impetus to promote the book, and but really both the book and the podcast were a platform for you to highlight your disability and to bring some things to light in that arena. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yes, that would be a fair thing to say. And since then, I have written 11 books and working on my 12th and 13th book.
What are your 12th and 13th book that you're working on right now?
One is going to be about podcasting from my perspective and how to do it and do it well. And then the other one is going to be self-help journalism, a journalism book.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, as someone who's also aspiring to write and to do some work and get my first book published, what was the biggest challenge that you faced dealing with that first book?
The biggest challenge that I first faced dealing with that book is that I didn't know that a publisher existed. I self-published my first book and got, I shouldn't say stuck, but I did get stuck. I got stuck using the free ISBN via Amazon, which makes it stuck on Amazon, and then you can't sell it in Barnes and Noble. You can't sell it in a local bookstore. So I would recommend, Nate, you go with a publisher. I actually have a publisher who's willing and able to work with everyone listening to this podcast. When you guys are ready, hit me up and I'll send you all the information.
Oh, that's amazing, because I actually had another guest that I just interviewed last week, and she self-published her first children's book, but she has two more that she's working on and definitely ready to take that next step. So I'll definitely would like to get that not only just for myself, but for her as well. So let me ask you this: in writing the book and in wanting to do the podcast, what were some of the things that you hope to bring to light with cerebral palsy that maybe you felt like that the general population did not know or didn't understand about your situation?
They still don't get this. Most people with a disability hold a college degree and they think we don't. And I am working on my second degree. My first degree is in education, and my second degree is in journalism. And so most people don't think we hold a college degree.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I see that's a perpetual challenge. It's like there's a very good support system in place years 1 through 18, getting through education, getting through high school, getting through that elementary education, if you will. But then it's like once you graduate out of high school, once you graduate out of a lot of those programs, there's not a lot of access to benefits. There's not a lot of programs out there for adults with disabilities. Would you think that's a fair assessment?
Exactly. And so you as a disabled person have to look under every single rock to find not only aids, but to find out all these programs all across the country. And that's why I am a advocate for helping people with disabilities live a fabulous life.
Well, and I think that's what's so fascinating about your lifestyle and what you do. You know, we were talking when I was on your podcast about the opportunities that you had to teach. You talked about just recently losing that opportunity, but you were kind of a teacher's babysitter, if you will. You were there to provide relief for the teachers. You think of a lot of people when they're dealing with disabilities, or when a lot of people think of jobs that a typical disabled person would be able to fulfill, they're very menial tasks. They're very repetitive in nature, and they're not very well thought out.
Their admin tasks are just doing mindless stuff. And some people like that. Some people do not. The creative types do not. I know plenty of creative types that have tried teaching, given it up because they need more time in the day and they need more creative freedom.
And I think that what I've tried to look at it from the perspective of is, I think that you look at, with any challenge, whether it be a disability or any obstacle that you're trying to overcome, and maybe not just a disability, that obstacle or that challenge can lead to an opportunity. And I think with a disability, there's things that are challenging, but there's also benefits. There's also special skills. There's also special talents that come along with that. And I forget the program that I was watching, but there was one show that was talking about NASA scientists, and they had an autistic guy that was working with them, and it was because of his autism that allowed him to be able to look at some of these maps and these graphs of stars and things out there in the galaxy, that allowed him to, his brain, just because of his disability, it was able to analyze and dissect a lot of the data in a way that normal, average, quote unquote, normal people, if you want to even call them that, couldn't understand or couldn't comprehend. And it was through his disability that they actually created a software that allowed regular NASA scientists to better analyze the data as a result of what this young man was able to do.
Yeah. Wow. That's absolutely amazing.
And I'm terribly sorry. I was not prepared with his name and information, but I will get it, and we'll put it maybe in the show notes so folks can reach out to that. But let me ask you this, from your perspective, having a disability, what are some of you obviously did the teaching, but what are some of the other jobs that you think other potentially disabled people would be a good fit for, maybe that aren't just those normal menial repetitive task type jobs? Like, where in your case, it was teaching, right? Like, I mean, you were able to connect with students on a whole nother level that regular teachers couldn't do.
And the parents didn't want me to leave, but I finally had to leave because they put me in an admin position. And I will tell you guys this, they put me in an admin position, which absolutely drove me bananas. Number one, they put me towards the back of the room, which means I couldn't see people. I couldn't interact with people like we're doing now. And to top it all off, the icing on the cake was they put me in a room with a copier, a physical copier. Do you know how this is a person that does not do well with loud noises, that will jump off a foot if I'm concentrated. People say, "When I need you." And so this is a person that doesn't do well with loud noises. Do you know how annoying that was, trying to concentrate with the loud noise of a copier? Oh,
Well,
I said, I don't want to be near the copier. I said to those guys, I don't want to be near the copier. I finally they put me somewhere else my last year, and we got nothing, and I'm not kidding, nothing done. And they put me on a diversity and inclusion committee, and we got nothing done.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm
Well,
out now.
that's a perfect example of a lack of understanding, but people not taking the time to understand a set of circumstances, to understand a situation, to understand how to best provide solutions to any given situation, whether it's dealing with somebody with a disability or not. It's just
And
ignorance at the end of the day.
icing on cake. My ex boss, my ex boss worked with Michelle Obama and President Obama before he came to me. So he understands unique circumstances because Sasha and Malia went to Sidwell Friends, and my ex boss worked with Sidwell Friends as the headmaster at Sidwell Friends before he came to Country Day, Aspen Country Day. And so he understands unique situations. And now for him to place me in the back of a room with a copier and with a person
Yeah. If
who,
anybody should have understood the situation, it should have been him.
yeah. Oh yeah, and a lot of people don't know that story. And I will deep dive that story on my podcast when I'm ready to deep dive. I'm still a recovering teacher, you guys. I am.
Hey, we're all going through that process, right? We're all kind of going through that refiner's fire, trying to get better at what we do. For
Yeah.
sure. So speaking of that, I want to go back to the YouTube stuff eventually, but since you kind of jumped onto the podcast again, I wanted to spend a little bit more time with that. You've have an amazing helper, or BFF as you call her,
Yeah.
that is the executive producer of your podcast. It's an amazing talent. Tell me about Danielle.
I acquired Dani because Danielle, aka D, aka Dani, aka BFF in my life that I can function without.
AKA the BFF.
I acquired her because she has to be my BFF. So we met
Now,
20.
does she have cerebral palsy also?
Yeah, she does. Yes, she does. And I'll get to her cerebral palsy in a minute because her cerebral palsy is completely different than mine. But we met 20 years ago through a Challenge Aspen play camp. And we just, as a human society, it's funny that we bring this up today because we did episode all about how we met. Again, for the new listeners of the artwork of CP, which is all about cerebral palsy. She and I do that. And so we did how we met again. And so she was at this play camp in 1995. And then we just basically met each other. I saw a young woman who walked like me, talked like me, functioned like me. So I was after that young woman. I didn't realize that she had cerebral palsy until many years later when I read the gallery copy of Dan Can Thread, You Can Do It Too. And then I realized, aha, you have cerebral palsy. When we met in 1995, she at the time, I didn't know what a disability is. I was just so fascinated by there's another human being that talks like me and walks like me, and we
Yeah, it was that
didn't
instant kindred spirit kind of thing, right?
know that. And so it's like, yeah. And so I was so fascinated by Waka, I was so fascinated by her that I didn't even realize, oh yeah, she has the same disability I do, but a different format. And so it wasn't until the gallery it wasn't until I got a scholarly copy of her book that I realized she had cerebral palsy, and how she acquired cerebral palsy was through lack of oxygen to the brain, but her cerebral palsy was acquired by getting the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, which is
Oh.
quite common,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the more common forms of cerebral palsy and getting cerebral palsy.
So let me ask you this. So did you already start the podcast and then bring Dani along for the ride, or was it something that you guys decided to do together, or how did that come about?
No, it was something that we decided to do together, more me because I'm the visionary. I said today, and at the time she was not here in Colorado. She was
Right.
in the city. And so to get her in a better state of mind, I said, I I want to start a I have a project idea. Do you want to help me? And that was text number one. And she goes, oh boy, here goes my BFF starting something again. And her text back to me was, sure, I'll help you. And I'm like, okay, great. This is what we're going to do. What do you want to do? Do scheduling or do the hosting end of it? She goes, I'll do scheduling. Ever since then, I have trained her how, well, I didn't train her how to do scheduling. She came up with that on her own. But I trained her how to upload the podcast and get it out to people. And so ever since then, we've been doing this for 10 years.
Y'all been at this for 10 years.
Yeah.
No wonder you're so good at it. Wow. That explains it. Because I mean, I have to tell you, I mean, I have worked with a lot of executive producers, and I've been fortunate to be on a few podcasts now. And I mean, I have yet to come across an executive producer of a podcast that is as organized and succinct and on top of her game as Dani is. I mean, I was just,
And thank you for saying that.
and
And
that's disability aside. Like, I mean, when I first was interacting with her, I didn't know she had a disability. I didn't know her from Adam. You know, she was just another executive producer that I was just scheduling through and everything. And it wasn't until I started doing my research and my homework on her that I actually found out that she even had a disability to begin with.
and so the point I the point that I want to make is people with cerebral palsy or autism or any other neurological disability, they like to know when, what, and how, and who we're doing it with. Yeah. So it's like give Danielle a task, throw out of her routine. She gets upset with me, and then I just leave alone when it comes to scheduling. I'm like, you be you, you just schedule this, and yeah.
But
So
that there again, that's a perfect example of utilizing your talents, utilizing what you're good at. That job is a perfect role for her because that it highlights all of her skills. It highlights all of her organizational attributes. And that's what's so
yeah,
cool about it.
and so I only got her behind the mic just to work with me to raise awareness on cerebral palsy, and she's done a couple other interviews, but the iPad and using assistive technology is a little bit easier for her. So yeah.
Yeah, and full disclosure to our audience, you know, Dani's. Would you consider her to be nonverbal? Would that be a correct term, or would you just say she?
I would consider her to be
She would be a difficult podcast interview without some type of visual assistance, maybe. Would
let's
that be?
be honest. I would consider her not non-verbal to the point of mute, but about 50%, meaning my own dad could barely understand what she was saying. And a lot of people can't. I can understand her
I'd say
90%
you understand her really well.
because no, because I understand people with speech impediments 90% of the time, not only because I've hung out with her for several years, so I can get her. But she does a pretty good job with the iPad. She's quick enough, but that's why I leave her alone and give her the job of scheduling, because I'm like, no. And she'll admit, she goes, I'm very uncomfortable being in the front of the mic, and she's gotten
Sure,
a lot
that's
better,
very natural to assume that. I mean that.
but because of a speech impediment and because of she unfortunately got bullied in school back in Kansas City. And because of that, I think she's a little gun shy of a podcast mic. It just dawned on me why. Because when you get bullied and teased, that affects you for the rest of
Oh,
your
for sure. Well, hey, for what it's worth, I haven't had to deal with any of those challenges, and I'm still intimidated by the process. I'm still intimidated
life.
about being in front of a
I think
mic
a
just
lot of
because of my accent and the
people,
fact that I talk funny.
I think a lot of able-bodied people are intimidated by the process.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so you talked about YouTube as well, and that when you first kind of started this iteration or this idea for getting the word out about your disability, you started off on the YouTube platform, but ultimately transitioned to the podcasting. As a person who's trying to utilize both of those platforms, what was the challenges that you faced with YouTube?
Well, the challenges that I faced were, even though I was getting great traction, and funny enough, I'm doing YouTube again in a different format. 10 years later, YouTube has come back to haunt me slash help me. I just now I'm doing it differently. I have a team behind me. I hooked up with an international broadcast team out of India, and
Are you
also,
on Ghana? That GAANA? Have you signed up with them?
yeah, I've on Ghana and Ghana
Yeah.
podcast, and then I'm doing the YouTube stuff with an international broadcast team out of India on IMTV and IMBTV. And
Nice.
so I have a weekly YouTube show on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock Eastern, 1 p.m. Mountain Time. And it's called Winning with Win, and it's women's empowerment, other men, and welcome.
Are you doing that as a live feed?
I'm doing that in the live feed.
Nice. Are
And
you, are you, are you, I'm sorry, I hate to keep interrupting you. I've got so many questions about this because all the stuff I'm trying to do too. So I'm just curious. So, are when you're doing your live feed on YouTube, are you then using one of those recasters or one of those,
yes,
things to feed it
yes,
live on Facebook and some of the other platforms as well?
we use StreamYard, and I'm lucky enough to use
StreamYard, so you like?
professional version of StreamYard. So yes, we use StreamYard, and all I have to do is show up, do the live feed, and then I walk away.
Nice.
And
That's cool because it makes it convenient where it's like it's manageable that way. You can just do one and be done with it and move on to your next thing.
and
That's brilliant.
but when I tried YouTube on my own, it was a disaster and a half, because not only was I getting great traction to it, it was just, and YouTube is a terrible thing, but I had a fan say to me, literally, I can't keep my laptop open as I work, and I want to support you, but I can't keep my laptop open. So what I'm realizing is a lot of these school districts now can't have the teachers watching the YouTube, and you can't.
Sometimes they block the site altogether, and not necessarily in educational formats, but in other places.
Exactly. And so with a podcast, you can sneak it in, you can put it here,
Below
and
the radar.
under the radar. I have a friend who's actually a rocket scientist, so that's why I don't use the expression "it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out," because I have a friend who's actually a rocket scientist, and he has a podcast called Better Podcasting, and his stage name is Stargate Pioneer. And what Stargate Pioneer does is he loads up a iPod and takes it to work with him, so he can listen to podcasts, them them not knowing what's going on, and yeah.
Yeah, he could go ahead and download all that. Well, that's one of the things I do like about podcasting is it gives you the ability to either download them so you can have them directly on your phone as if you would just like like a picture, essentially. But then or you can stream them live, or you can listen to them, without having to download them if you have a good connection, that sort of thing. So it gives you so many different ways to consume that content. That's very appealing
Yeah.
to me, and I think that's why podcasting will continue to be a dominant form, or continue to grow to be a more dominant form in the marketplace of getting information out there.
I'm noticing during the world pandemic, as we record this, it's November 9th, by the way, and I'm noticing that YouTube is getting squished because every time Dick and Harry is using YouTube, everyone, mother and brother, are using YouTube to watch videos, whether it's educational videos from distance learning or whether it's from just relax time. But so many podcasts are being consumed right now, even though we don't have the commutes. But because podcasts can be consumed mobilely, they can be consumed as you're doing the dishes. And the latest and greatest thing is that the Amazon smart speakers and Google smart speakers, you can set skills, you can set actions, and with podcasting now, Amazon smart speaker has opened up, has put podcast in their Amazon music store, and you can go follow your favorite podcast. I have about 90 downloads on the Amazon smart speaker side of Ask Win.
Nice. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So anybody that is either listening to this on Alexa or one of those smart devices in your home, make sure that you subscribe to both the
Yes,
Extraordinary podcast
yes.
and the Ask Win podcast on that platform, and they'll automatically get your downloads and get you updates.
Get your downloads. And so one other tip I want to give you, Nate, is do not say the Amazon smart speakers words, because she'll go off. She'll go off, and then people will be mad at us. So that's why I have said the lady in the tube, or I have learned the knowledge, because when I say Amazon smart speakers name, she'll go off.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have a daughter named Alexis. And
Oh,
so whenever we're in a room where one of those devices is located and we call out her name, the speaker cuts on. Like, yes, can I help you? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you please repeat it?
yeah, could you please repeat it? No,
Never fails.
no, and no, that's not good.
So let me ask you this. Does Danielle, does she also produce all your YouTube content as well? Do all the back end and SEO stuff on that?
I have a different team that helps me with that. I have a million teams that help me with, because she's so good at scheduling the podcast. I leave her alone. I don't. She watches my work. She supports my work, but I leave her alone. Podcasting, scheduling is her thing. I don't necessarily bring it into the YouTube realm unless it's me and I'm interviewing her.
Well, yeah, and the reason why I ask is because she has a really great YouTube channel as well. And let's go ahead and plug that. Is her YouTube channel also called Dan Can Shred, or does it have a different name?
Yes.
Yeah, so be sure to check out her. She's got some really cool YouTube videos out there as well. So I just wasn't sure if she was producing your stuff too.
I'll give you her website as well, and her website is actually connected to my website, and we even though we're two different content creators, we actually use the same website. We have our own separate websites, but we use AskWin as the main hub.
Nice.
Uses Dankin thread, you can do it too. If you type in Dankin thread, you can do it too. If you go look at the bottom of it, of her email, to those of you that want to be on my podcast, you can email her and she'll get you scheduled. And then if you, Nate, can put all my documentation to the podcast in the show notes of this podcast
Oh, of course.
that I gave you, you you guys can click on that link. She'll get you scheduled, and then we'll all be good to go.
Yeah, and not only that, but we'll be promoting it on social media as well. We'll have links in our social media content throughout. Once this episode publishes throughout the course of that week, we'll be continuing to put links out there to make sure everybody can find it. And that's really smart on y'all's part to have that one central location that then you can then branch out to find everything. One of the mistakes that I've made early on is that I've spread myself over a couple of different areas and locations, websites and whatnot, instead of being centrally located. And I think over the long run that's actually hurt me, and it's actually prohibited some of my growth by making it a little bit confusing.
Guess what? You're going to get a broken podcast feed because of me.
There you go. That's right.
Podcast feed because of me. And when I tell people that, they're like, what? You play podcast feeds? I'm like, trust me, I have done over 15,000 episodes. I just handed my podcast to a person that I'm working with on a secret project. We'll just leave it at that because I can't tell.
Wait. You're going to drop a teaser like that? You have a secret project going on? Well, give us something. Give us some kind of a clue, or give us a little teaser or something that we can hang our hat on to keep us occupied and make us think about it.
Let's just say this move I'm doing now is going to be potentially move number 1. And I'll leave it at that. This move is going to be potentially move number 1, and I'll leave it at that. You guys have to listen to the podcast to the story.
I love it. That's awesome.
And when I say move, I mean physically move. So move.
So the second move could be an even bigger move than the first. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. The second even be a big move. And it won't surprise some of my fans. Some of my fans will be shocked, but secret projects. I'm working on a secret project. Well, anyway, I handed my podcast to this person I'm working on a secret project with, and she goes, great, I'm in a call a lot. I'm always looking for new podcasts. Yours is going to go in my feed. And I had a person tell me this morning that they listened to my podcast on a tractor as they plow a lavender farm out in Texas.
That's amazing.
I've got my crew who supports me. So all I have to do is do one single share button, and then I get downloads after downloads after downloads.
That's amazing. Well, it just speaks to your cause, and it speaks to your mission, and that you've really, like, your niche. Like we said when I was on your podcast, we talk about what a great job you do in creating that niche and creating community around that niche. That's amazing. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because we're already running super short on time, and I'm barely even scratching the surface of all the things I want to talk to you about. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the physical activities. We talked about Dan Can Shred is based on Dani's site on or her YouTube videos on snowboarding, where she has gotten out of her comfort zone and learned how to do some snowboarding. And you have also done some athletic endeavors that are outside your comfort zone that really relate to me and what I like to do with my crazy lifestyle. So tell me about your experience with triathlon.
I was lucky enough, the Kona Ironman. I am the first woman with cerebral palsy to be doing the Kona Ironman, and I was lucky enough to do the Kona Ironman. I was also lucky enough to get hooked up with a program in the Georgia area called Walk with KP, Walk with KPZ. And these two individuals, one, Kyle Pace, has cerebral palsy. His brother is his teammate. And Brent and Kyle Pease also are Kona Ironman competitors. And I've been lucky enough to work with them. I actually did the Peachtree road race in
Nice.
June. I was I've traveled to Atlanta and did a road race in Atlanta, and
Yeah, that's the biggest 10K in the world.
yeah. So
Right in my backyard too. That's awesome.
don't know about me is I am the biggest 10K. See, I learned this. I didn't know it was the biggest 10K, but
Yeah.
Walk with KPC does is they land up doing everything with disabilities. So what they land up doing is walking is helping kids do road races with disabilities. And so I'm going to shoot you that information as well. And then I'm going, and they're always looking for volunteers. I happen to bring my own team down with me. And so you guys, I may be doing marathons again.
Oh yeah.
Never know. But people have always asked me, they're like, would you ever do a marathon again? And I said, yeah, with a different team. And I won't do well, maybe I will. I won't do, maybe I will do the triathlon again with a different team. And so,
Well, yeah,
you
but I mean, once you've done the world championship Kona race, I mean, you've kind of checked that box. There's nothing else to do in triathlon that has any significance. Once you've done that, it's like you filled that bucket.
I did not get a medal for that one. We got stuck on the bike and we got stuck on the bike
Oh,
because
so you got a DNF.
yeah, well, we got stuck on the bike, of course.
Oh,
And
well, then if that's the case, then you have to go back to redeem yourself. You got to go back and go, not necessarily Kona, but you got to go get the full, man. You got to get that badge. You got to get that medal.
yes, I will probably do Colorado one, either Georgia
Yeah.
or
Boulder.
Florida
Do
one.
Boulder. Boulder would be amazing. That
I
race is
have
gorgeous.
I have done Boulder. I have done Boulder. Um, I just need to set myself up to do it with a different team.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you need a teammate, I'm always down.
Ah,
I'm going to sign up for the to volunteer for this organization that you just brought up in Georgia because I didn't even know about them. Yeah,
KP.
I'm going to
And
sign up with them. But yeah, dude, if you're putting another team together, you can count me in. I'm totally down. I'll do whatever leg you want to. I'll do any of it. I'm totally down.
I am going to consider doing marathons again with Walk with KP. Now that I know that I have more support down there. And
Yeah. Well, we can do a marathon too. I'm down with that. If you want to do a marathon, I'm cool with that too. I'd be totally down.
because
And if you did it in Georgia, especially, that would just be amazing to have you come down and we
I
could
might
make
I,
a whole thing out of it.
I might have to do that for my own sake, just because now that I have more credibility. I mean, when I did the Peach Tree road race, I I had no credibility to my name, no nothing. I was just trying to raise awareness about cerebral palsy. It turned into a disaster in a half of a year. And so now that I have credibility to my name and people that are willing and able to help me, and yeah.
Well, let me say this. You just said that you didn't have the credibility, and I don't think that that's accurate. I think you've always had the credibility. I think you've always had that. You may not have had the notoriety or the fame and the whatever, but I think you've always had the credibility. And I think that having that credibility for so long is what has led to the notoriety that you experience now. So I think that's an incredibly amazing thing. We've officially run out of time when I've got so many more things I want to talk to you about and so many more things we want to dive into.
2-part episode.
Yeah,
Please.
well, we'll definitely have to. We've got big plans in store, so this is just the beginning of all the different things that I have in store for us. But as we wrap up, there's 2 questions that I always wrap up with all my guests. I want to make sure that I give it you an ample opportunity to share these answers as well. My last 2 questions before we plug your social media and your charity and all that kind of stuff is, what's the one message that you want to share with the world? And 2, what's your favorite item under $100 that you use on an everyday basis that you could not live without?
My favorite item under $100 is my Amazon smart speaker, and I can't live without her. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I just got a Google too. And the reason why the Google hasn't been unboxed yet is because I'm waiting to get my own office. And then I'll have Google and the Amazon smart speaker hooked up all over the place. So I
And
will, yeah.
what's the biggest benefit that speaker brings to you? What do you personally use it the most for?
I use it for podcasting. I use it for listening to podcasts because I have a hard time due to fine motor skills. I have a hard time clicking buttons. So if I can say, "Hey Google, play Ask Win," "Hey Google, play music, play X, Y, and Z," just use my voice, and people are like, "You use Amazon Alexa as a smart assistive device?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. I can make it sing." And so
That's beautiful. Perfect answer. I love that. I couldn't ask for a better answer. And so following that up with, like, most people, if they had a blank billboard and they could write anything on it to share with the world, what would your message be that you would like to share with the world?
just do it. And I know it sounds cheesy, but just do it.
Just do it. Awesome. Wynn, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat. And like I said, we have so much more to cover and so many more projects and things in store. I'm really looking forward to us getting to work together, knowing each other better. And it's just really exciting. I love to, you're an incredibly inspiring person, and you really get me motivated to do a better job at what I do day in and day out. So I'm grateful to you for that. Tell everybody where they can find you, the podcast, and what charity or organization that you promote or that you support, where people can find information about that.
Like to have everyone go to askwin.weebelize.com, and I want to give a huge shout out to Walk with KP, which is down in Atlanta, and you guys should go sign up. And if they wonder why they're getting flooded, I sign up to volunteer and help. Just say Win Charles, and they know who I am. They know me under Team We Win. So if you put Team We Win, they will automatically connect the dots. And then another organization that is out here in my neck of the woods is Challenge Aspen. So if you guys want to go donate to Challenge Aspen to support them. And please, 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 I'm going to be blunt and say this. Don't donate to United Cerebral Palsy. United Cerebral Palsy won't even speak to me. My national chapter of United Cerebral Palsy won't even speak to me because they're doing research. And so don't donate to United Cerebral Palsy. Donate to Walk with KP or donate to Challenge Aspen and make me happy.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think that that's worth noting. A lot of these larger, more recognized organizations, a lot of the money is not allocated as well as it probably should be or could be. And a lot of times, and a lot of those organizations, I've learned in getting more and more involved in philanthropic efforts, how much political agendas and just things that don't sit well with me that go on within that space. So to go for your local chapters, local organizations that you know and support, those are the ones where the money does the most benefit. Yeah. And we just brought two up here, one locally in Atlanta. We have a lot of Atlanta listeners, being that we're based out of here. And obviously we got a pretty good following out there in Colorado. So there's two great organizations that are local that desperately need your money.
That desperately need your money. And pandemic isn't helping you guys. So if you can help those local organizations, local to you and local to me, that would be great and make me happy.
Awesome. Wynn, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to doing part 2 with you real soon.
Thank you. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by Atlantic Custom Group. For all your home repair and improvement needs, Atlantic Custom Group specializes in the unique and inspiring. From custom libraries and millwork to tree houses and off-grid structures, Atlantic Custom Group can do it all. Renovate your kitchen, remodel your basement, or reinvent your entire home with Atlantic Custom Group. Call now for an appointment, 770-827-7591. Atlantic Custom Group is the official sponsor for the Extraordinary Podcast. So you're still here. Wow. Thanks for sticking around. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? What would you like to know more about? Who would you like to hear on the show? If you stuck around this long, maybe you won't mind giving me some feedback. And don't forget to check out the website, extraordinarypodcast.net, for all the latest episodes. And if you enjoyed the show, please take the time to share with your friends, on social media, or with anyone you think who might enjoy it. And last but not least, if you're ready to start living an extraordinary life, check out 8keystogreat.com, where you can craft your free blueprint to renovate your career, home, or lifestyle. The program is free, but you have to do the work to unlock each key. And finally, if you'd like to speak with me directly, you can book a free 30-minute Zoom call directly through my Calendly link on the contacts page. And in the meantime, check out some of the other exciting interviews with ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thanks for listening, thanks for sharing, and most of all, thanks for just being you. I'm Nate G, and we'll see you next week.